Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Did you see where President Trump had suggested he was going to throw out the first pitch at a Yankees game? And then he said he wasn't going to, but then went golfing with Brett Favre. That led to Seth Meyers saying President Trump announced he will not be able to throw out the ceremonial first pitch at a Yankees game next month because of his, quote, strong focus on the China virus, including scheduling meetings on vaccines, our economy, and much else. He then ran the tweet by his proofreader, Brett Favre, and Favre says, looks good, let's hit the back nine. Fallon said Trump won't be throwing out the first pitch, although, thanks to his handling of the pandemic, he might be able to throw out the last pitch of the season tomorrow. That's really good. Fallon said, I wish Trump didn't cancel, mostly because I wanted to see him slowly walk down the pitcher's mound. That's awesome. Jimmy Fallon has really picked up his game. Hey, it's time to break out the Gaffigan voice. Hey, this weekend is the anniversary of Bob Newhart's The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart. That album actually came out on August 1st, 1960. Hey, I bet Johnny Mac wishes he hadn't pre-recorded Saturday before he saw this story. On August 1st, 1960, The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart reached #1 on the Billboard charts, the first ever comedy album to do so. This from the New York Post. Newhart told them, I thought it might sell maybe 5,000 albums. I would have been happy with that. I really saw it as an adjunct to stand-up, maybe get 4 or 5 more people to come to a club because they'd heard about the album. Then it exploded. Bob said, I'd graduated with a degree from accounting from Loyola University Chicago, and all my friends were getting married and buying homes and having kids, and I was working part-time at Christmas in one of those department stores. It took Warner Brothers the better part of a year to find a club willing to let the novice stand-up comedian with no experience record his act. They wound up recording at Tidelands Club in Houston. Bob says one of the first things he learned in stand-up the first day of Not Sooner is that you can't show any fear. You're in charge of the stage. That's your stage. And if the audience senses any reticence on your part, you're dead meat. So I walked onto that stage in Houston with all the bravado I could command. Bob said the comedy clubs weren't around then. There was a big sea change in comedy. There was Mike Nichols and Elaine May, Shelley Berman, myself, Jonathan Winters, and Lenny Bruce. We all kind of happened at the same time, and the humor was different than the humor before that, where there were a lot of wife jokes, and they had no relevance to college kids who picked up these albums, which were about their fears and their concerns about life. They would get the record albums and go to someone's dorm and get beer and pizzas, and someone had a record player. Those were their nightclubs. I think they really created that demand. In April of 61, Newhart won 3 Grammys for The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart and its follow-up album, The Button-Down Mind Strikes Back. He won Best New Artist, Album of the Year, and Best Comedy Performance Spoken Word. Bob said they didn't even have a category for comedy at that time. It beat out Belafonte, Sinatra, and an Elvis album. They kept calling my name, and I kept walking up there and thanking them for awards. Years later, I was giving Richard Pryor a Lifetime Comedy Achievement Award. Richard was in a wheelchair at the time, and he looked up and he said to me, I stole your album in Peoria, Illinois. I went into a record store and I put it in my jacket. Newhart said, Richard, I get a quarter an album. So he got a quarter from someone and gave it to me for my royalty. Are you watching Solar Opposites yet? That's on Hulu, and this from Deadline. If you're not, I'll explain it. The show centers around a team of 4 aliens who escape their exploding home world only to crash land into a move-in ready home in suburban America. I should mention this is animated, and this is from half the creators of Rick and Morty. It's really wonderful. The aliens are evenly split on whether Earth is awful or awesome. Corvo and Yumulak only see the pollution, crass consumerism, and human frailty, while Terry and Jesse love humans and all their TV, junk food, and fun stuff. Their mission, protect the Poopa, a living supercomputer that will one day evolve into its true form, consume them, and terraform the Earth. Oh my. Executive producer Mike McMahon talked about the second season. He said, there's nothing we hate more than haters, and we really bring the haters the second season. We take it to the haters pretty strong, and also camp. We make fun of camp and haters. Season 2 will also explore interesting class stuff when they discover there's another group of people that are there. They've never had to worry about class as aliens. We have a great episode where Terry's obsessed with dinner parties and Corvo's terrible at dinner parties and says all the wrong things. One of the voices on that show is comedian Mary Mack. She's really terrific. You should check her out. KVUE wrote about drive-in comedy shows. They spoke with comedian Stephen Farmer, who said, I spent at least the first 2 minutes just making fun of the absurdity of the situation. I can't just go into it like it's a normal thing. Farmer says, for every comedian, it's so awkward for them the first time they think they're bombing, even though they're doing well, because they can't hear people laughing. Honking isn't allowed at his show, so if the audience think a joke is funny, they flash their lights. The crowd work most comedians do is different as well. Comedian Ronnie Fleming says, instead of making fun of someone's shirt, you can just make fun of someone's crappy car. John Cleese has that streaming show tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, if that's still the future in your life as you listen to this. He spoke to the Houston Chronicle, who said, for a moment I was going to ask why there's no hope, but we might be here all day. Cleese said, well, there'd be no possibility of ending. It's a very depressing title unless people have the same sort of dark sense of humor that I do, that they laugh at the title. Otherwise, They look sort of scared. The thing I like to emphasize is this. Are you aware of the Serenity Prayer? It's very beautiful. Once, I went to see my mom, who was about 95 years old, at the old folks' home, and to my astonishment, I saw it pinned up on the notice board. What it says is, if you can change something, have the courage to change it. If you can't change it, have the patience to put up with it. And please, God, give us the ability and wisdom to tell the difference. My talk is about the things we can't change, which is really society. Any belief that we can construct an intelligent, kind, thoughtful, generous society is nonsense. Because most people have no idea what they're talking about. I'm that way too myself. I have a small number of areas where I know what I'm talking about, but most of the time it's just bleeped, which is the language we use to talk to each other. We don't have enough information to talk more accurately. Donald Trump talks in pure horse hockey. It's a language so many of his supporters speak, to the point if you start speaking correct grammatically, they think you're putting on airs. The reporter says, I'm reminded of Life of Brian, which came out almost 40 years ago. One character asks, what have the Romans done for us? And another says, peace. Cleese laughs and says, yes, it's connected to that idea. What's the word? Paradox. What irritates me are people who say there's no paradox. They say all empires are bad, and I say no, some things empires did were good, many things they did were bad, but it wasn't all good or bad. Some people, you tell them Hitler was nice to his dog, and it upsets them. They want him to be 100% evil, not 99.9. That's paranoia, defining things as purely good or purely bad, and it always brings trouble. Think of the Puritans during the time when the Puritans were in charge. That's when your witch hunting starts. If you have men who think they're very pure, who start to have sexy thoughts, they think, well, it's not my responsibility. Obviously, somebody put the sexy thoughts in my head. It was probably those awful women things, so let's burn a few. John Cleese, There Is No Hope. That's 6 p.m. Eastern tonight. It's streaming. You can Google where to get tickets. Again, from memory, I think it was like $15. That is your comedy news for today. Subscribe on Apple, Google, follow on Spotify. See you tomorrow.